Hello everyone, welcome to this series on the history of English literature. And in this video, we are going to discuss the development of poetry in the age of transition. Introduction. Between 1740 and 1800, English poetry underwent a significant transformation. In 1740, Alexander Pope was still the dominant poetic voice and Samuel Johnson was an aspiring junior. By 1800, the works of Robert Burns and William Blake signaled the unquestionable arrival of Romanticism. This great change came gradually, but its stages can be observed with some precision. Decline of the heroic couplet. The end of an era. The first symptom of the coming change was the decline of the heroic couplet, a poetic form that had dominated English poetry during the Augustan Age. Its prominence waned after the death of its greatest exponent, Alexander Pope. The heroic couplet, characterized by rhymed pairs of iambic pentameter lines, had been the vehicle for much of the era's satire and moral reflection. Emergence of new forms. Toward the middle of the century, poets began to experiment with a variety of other poetic forms. This experimentation marked a departure from the strictures of the heroic couplet and opened the door for new expressions and themes in poetry. Rise of the Pindaric Ode, a transitional medium. The change was first notably seen in the free use of the Pindaric Ode in the works of Thomas Gray and William Collins, which appeared in the middle years of the century. The Pindaric Ode, inspired by the ancient Greek poet Pindar, provided a flexible structure that combined classical elements with greater freedom in meter and stanza form. Notable works. Thomas Gray's The Bard, 1757. This poem blends classical form with romantic sensibility, portraying the prophetic curse of a Welsh bard upon Edward I after the conquest of Wales. William Collins's The Passions, 1747. An ode that personifies various human emotions, showcasing a departure from rigid forms and an exploration of inner experiences. These works utilized the Pindaric Ode's versatility to break away from the constraints of the couplet and stanza, serving as a bridge between classical and romantic poetry. Revival of the ballad. Renewed interest in old literature. Another omen of change was the revival of the ballad, stemming from a renewed interest in older forms of literature. The ballad offered a narrative style that was more direct and emotional than the polished verse of the Augustan poets. Contributions and examples. Oliver Goldsmith's The Hermit, a ballad that, while lacking the grimness of traditional ballads, provides lively and engaging storytelling. William Cowper's John Gilpin, a humorous ballad that became popular for its entertaining narrative. Thomas Percy's Relics of Ancient English Poetry, 1765. Percy not only collected traditional ballads but also composed his own, such as The Friar of Orders Grey, contributing significantly to the ballad revival. Thomas Chatterton's Bristow Tragedy, a poem that captures much of the fire and somberness of old ballads, showcasing a deep engagement with medieval themes and styles. This revival signaled a shift toward appreciating the simplicity and emotional depth of earlier poetic forms. Descriptive and narrative poems. Evolution of poetic content. Descriptive and narrative poetry began to flourish during this period, moving away from the satirical and didactic themes of earlier decades. Key developments. Samuel Johnson's London, 1738, an early example that while old-fashioned set the stage for later developments. Oliver Goldsmith's The Traveller 1764 and The Deserted Village 1770. These poems used the heroic couplet but infused it with genuine sympathy for nature and rural life, transforming the form with emotional depth. William Cowper's The Task, a blank verse poem that reflects on nature, everyday life, and personal feelings, emphasizing a more intimate connection with the reader. George Crabbe's The Village. Utilizing heroic couplets, Crabbe presented a realistic portrayal of rural poverty, challenging the idealized depictions common in earlier works. William Shenstone's The Schoolmistress. Written in Spenserian stanzas, this poem nostalgically reflects on rural education and simplicity. These works demonstrate a growing interest in nature, rural life, and the experiences of ordinary people, aligning with emerging romantic ideals. Rise of the Lyric. Breaking free from conventions. Finally, there was a notable rise in lyric poetry, which emphasized personal emotion and individual experience. Progression of the lyric spirit. Collins and Gray's Pindaric Odes. While innovative, their lyrics were still constrained by formal structures, described as being in starch and buckram. Thomas Chatterton, his works displayed a bold imagination and emotional intensity, hinting at the potential of lyric poetry. Christopher Smart. Known for A Song to David, Smart's poetry combined religious fervor with vivid imagery. James Macpherson's Ossian poems. Though later questioned for their authenticity, these works captivated readers with their melancholic beauty and heroic themes. William Cowper. His hymns and shorter poems expressed personal faith and introspection with clarity and sincerity. Robert Burns. As a Scottish poet, Burns infused his lyrics with dialect and folk influences, celebrating love, nature, and social commentary. William Blake. Blake's songs of innocence and experience explored profound themes through simple yet profound language and imagery. Triumph of Romanticism. Through these poets, the lyrical spirit struggled against and eventually broke free from traditional constraints, soaring in triumph. The personal, emotional, and imaginative qualities of their work signified the full arrival of Romanticism in English poetry. Conclusion. The period between 1740 and 1800 was a time of significant transition in English poetry. The decline of the heroic couplet, the rise of the Pindaric Ode, the revival of the ballad, the development of descriptive and narrative poems, and the emergence of powerful lyric poetry all contributed to the gradual but profound shift from classical to romantic ideals. By the end of the century, Romanticism had firmly established itself, ushering in a new era of poetic expression that emphasized emotion, nature, and individualism. So, this was the discussion on the development of poetic form in the age of transition. We will meet in the next video and discuss some other topic related to this period. Until then, goodbye and thank you.